And at that time, the Rebbe not only approved of it, but he encouraged it, and he would listen to the radio broadcast on Motzei Shabbos, and then he would give Rabbi Weinberg comments afterwards, like, this you said not exactly that, you should say it differently. And the Rebbe said at that time that people think that the radio was made like to broadcast news and music and all kinds of, things that people listen to the radio, and that we're just sort of hitching a ride on it with the Tanya classes. The Rebbe said, no, that's not true. The radio was made to broadcast Tanya.
Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shalom.
We are two Chassids in a pod.
This is a podcast from the mystical city of Tzfat, Israel, about Judaism living a Torah-observant lifestyle.
We discuss a wide range of topics, including spirituality, everyday struggles, current events, and interviews with interesting people.
All this from the perspective of two young Balei Tshuva who made Aliyah.
Welcome to the pod.
Welcome to Two Chassids in a Pod. We're very excited to have our second guest so far on the show, Rabbi Aaron Shaffier from Be'er Sheva, connecting to us. He's quite a successful tour guide in the Israeli scene. He's been on doing it for years. I've been following him online for years. Has quite a following there on Instagram.
Yeah, quite the following.
And we're very excited to have you on, Rabbi Aaron.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I saw you guys on Instagram. I saw the podcast you're doing. And it looks like you guys are doing great stuff. And I think bright things are ahead of you. Emir Hashem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God willing, it'll all go according to just how you blessed us. So we just wanted to get into a little bit more of I think this is one of the major things that have been affected in this past year is the tourism industry. I read an article recently that it was 80% of tourism is down, and it's equivalent to over 4 billion in the market. And it's a pretty crazy statistic, and I just wanted to see what exactly has your last year been like.
No doubt, the tourism industry is basically gone since last Purim or so. This whole year, I've only done 2 or 3 tours for either local people or one person who was visiting for a simcha, and also a little bit for the seminaries, the girls' schools that are here for the year and have had some small opportunities to do tourism. But all the regular tourists that come are not here this year. It's been a very different year for me. A lot of tour guides are suffering a lot. Those who rely on tourism for their only source of income are really suffering. But Baruch Hashem, I'm also a Sofer Stam. I write Torah scrolls, mezuzahs, tefillin. And also I do some other stuff here and there. So I've been very busy this year, maybe even more so than regular, but just not with tourism.
That's great. That's I didn't know you at all. You were a Sofer Stam. When did you learn that?
I wrote my first Megillah when I was 18, when I learned in yeshiva in Kiryat Gat. Since then, Baruch Hashem, I'm working on my 16th Sefer Torah.
Wow.
And then lots of mezuzahs and tefillin and stuff like that.
We actually recently had a very strange story with the Sefer Torah here in Tzfat. This Shabbos, actually, we read in the Sefer Torah, Mishpatim, and I think during the third Aliyah, he suddenly stopped, and he stopped for a long time. And apparently, the whole rest of the Parsha was missing. And even a piece of the next Parsha, Truma, was missing. Just like it started with the next Parsha.
Wow.
In the middle somewhere, yeah.
That's so unusual. Usually the Torah scrolls today are computer checked, so those kind of things are rare to come across unless maybe the person who sewed it together maybe sewed the pages in out of order. It could be that it's a new scroll and they sewed the pages in out of order, because the computer will never catch that because they scan them one page at a time usually. So anyways, that's pretty crazy.
Wow. Have you ever heard of something like this?
I have heard of it coming up. Like I said, that the pages are sewn in out of order. One also, very old Torahs that were never computer checked, like, just for the listeners that may not know what I'm talking about when I say computer check, in the 1980s, someone invented a software that you scan the Torah scroll into the computer, and the computer uses text recognition software. It learns the handwriting of the scribe, and then it's able to check the Torah scroll or Tefillin scrolls or mezuzah scrolls to make sure that there's no major mistakes in there. It's very, very good at catching missing words, missing letters, and stuff like that, almost 100%. Other kinds of more subtle things, it's not so good at, and that's why it's still very important for a human scribe to check the Stam, Sifrei Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzahs. But because of this software, it's very rare today to come across a Torah scroll that's missing a letter or missing a word or something like that. But some very old scrolls, I just saw on a forum on WhatsApp for Torah scribes that someone posted that they found in Parshat Zechor, they were preparing the Torah scroll for Parshat Zechor, which we're reading this coming week in the synagogue, and they were looking over it to make sure it's kosher, because it's a very important mitzvah that Parshat Zechor be read from a kosher Torah scroll. Some say it's a mitzvah d'oraita from the Torah. So he was looking it over, and he saw that Amalek was written with a kaf, sofit, instead of a kuf. And this is a scroll from before the Holocaust that's been read hundreds of times, but somehow it was overlooked every time.
Wow.
That's so there are things, we have to pay attention to everything. It's one of the I think also for me is like when I started to make tshuva, there's so much attention to detail that goes into Judaism. Right? We know halakha from the second you wake up until the second you go to sleep, and even how you sleep, there's halachas. Right? Like everything is attention to detail. So no matter what advanced technology you can have, we can't trust the computer 100% on a mitzvah, on something that's so dear to us. We have to, us as the human, as the Jew, go through it and make sure that everything's kosher. It's really amazing.
Absolutely.
Talking about the Sofer Stam and all this stuff, and you being a tour guide and with the whole COVID thing, is this what you're doing now? Mainly, are you doing now, or are you still doing also? How do you? What is it?
So, like, wow, where do I start? So I'm one of these people who's always getting myself into many more things than I have time to handle. So, in normal years, besides being a tour guide, I'm also a Torah scribe, and I'm usually busy about half the time with each. And then I have other projects, like I have a website called mezuzahstore.com that I started about 22 years ago in 1999, which sells mezuzahs all over the world. And also my wife, Michal, or Miko is her English name, she wrote a book 5 years ago. The listeners won't know, but you guys can see in the video, I have the book up there actually behind me, called Learn to Read Hebrew in 6 Weeks, which teaches people how to read Hebrew. And both of those things in the last year have gotten very strong, actually. It's a big bracha from Hashem that Dafka, in the year when, as a tour guide, I have no business, these other two businesses really have maybe doubled, let's say. Wow. So I've been very busy the last year dealing with those things and planning new projects. And I actually set myself up a studio because I'm doing a lot of live broadcasting now of Torah shiurim and Israel content.
We just subscribed to your YouTube channel. It's jam-packed. There's a lot of stuff there. So,
I wouldn't call it jam-packed, but it's going to be soon.
Good. That's it's one of the interesting things, like you're saying, that the ability to pivot, and when one thing is kivyachol, so to say, taken away from you, that you can turn to a new direction, and it's a really important thing. Like I've seen tour guides that have been doing virtual tours. Do you have any experience with that this year? Like have you done that, any of them?
I haven't done any virtual tours. I've had a few requests for stuff like that, and I referred it to my fellow tour guides.
How
I
would
don't
that
know.
work?
To me, I'll tell you. Like most of my tours are based on Tanakh. I love to do tours based on Tanakh. I love to go to a site where Shimshon, Samson stood and point there and say, "Hey, this rock right here, Samson saw this." Like I love that. And I always say on my tours that I'm basically a Tanakh teacher, a Torah teacher. I just have a better classroom. Usually the Tanakh teacher is reading from a book and has a whiteboard in front of them, and and the students are falling asleep because it's not real. And the reason I love being a tour guide is because when you take the person to the place and you show them where it happened and how it happened, it becomes real. It's not a legend anymore. It's not like some fantasy story. It's something that actually happened. It has a place, it has a time, it has a history. So to me, virtual tours is like taking all of that away and going back to the classroom model. If I want to teach a Torah class, I can teach a Torah class. I do that. I do that on live streaming. I do it on. I used to do Twitter, Periscope, which was a live streaming app of Twitter, but they're going defunct. There's a month left till they're closing that down. So now I'm transitioning more to live streaming on YouTube and Twitter and other platforms. But I know how to, I can teach a class, but a virtual tour, I don't know. I just don't connect to it. So I haven't been doing that. I've been referring those out.
I know you're also a Baal Tshuva, right? You said.
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit on the importance of, like we just started this podcast. We just started this endeavor that we're going on, this journey that we're on, right? How important is it for a Baal Tshuva specifically to be able to use modern tools and the internet to be able to do outreach and to get messages spread in ways that we couldn't have done in previous generations?
Wow. So, I'll tell you a story with the Lubavitch Rebbe that back in the day, I don't know if it was the 60s, maybe, they started to broadcast on Motzei Shabbos in New York, lessons in Tanya. Rabbi Yosef Weinberg, Alav Shalom. If you've ever seen the book in English, Lessons in Tanya, which is like the classic kind of,
right here.
Oh, you have it. Awesome. It's like the classic kind of explanation of the translation explanation of the Tanya. That book originated as radio broadcasts that were done by Rabbi Yosef Weinberg every Motzei Shabbos in New York. Wow. Now, at the time, that was totally revolutionary to go and start teaching Tanya on the radio. Chassids was taught by Rebbes at the Tish, at a Farbringen, after a Maimer Nigun, after all the preparations, and to go put Tanya, not stories from the Parsha or whatever, but actual straight up Chassids on the radio was a big chidush at that time. And at that time, the Rebbe not only approved of it, but he encouraged it, and he would listen to the radio broadcast on Motzei Shabbos, and then he would give Rabbi Weinberg comments afterwards, like, this you said not exactly that, you should say it differently. And the Rebbe said at that time that people think that the radio was made to broadcast news and music and all kinds of, things that people listen to the radio, and that we're just sort of hitching a ride on it with the Tanya classes. The Rebbe said, no, that's not true. The radio was made to broadcast Tanya, but in order that it should come into the vessels of the world, and it shouldn't be done in a miraculous way that all these radio stations and technology and everything are set up just for Tanya, which would be totally miraculous. So Hashem brought it about in a way that most of what's going on in the radio is news and music and sports and all of that. And the Tanya is there for those who want to see it and hear it. And then I'll take it a step further. Another thing with the Rebbe was that when cable television came out and there was the ability to do live broadcast of the Farbrengens, the Rebbe pushed very, very much to do live broadcast of all the Farbrengens that were during weekdays. The Rebbe had them invest money to bring the best technology, the best television cameras, microphones, sound systems. The hookup room, if you know what that means, which had a different meaning than how people use that term today. But they had this room, they call it the hookup room, which was, I still remember when I was in yeshiva, that every yeshiva around the world of Chabad had their own little room that was connected in by telephone to the central room in 770, by which all the Farbrengens during the week would be broadcast out to all the yeshivas all over the world over the PA system. And if the Rebbe would Farbring during the week, the message would go out. There was no WhatsApp or anything, but phone calls and beepers. They had beepers in those days, would go off saying the Rebbe is Farbringing. And in every city around the world where there were Chabad Chassidim, people would run to the local place where they're doing the broadcast to listen to the Farbringen over the PA system. So what I'm getting at is, from the point of view of Chassidus, and at least personally as someone who's connected to Chabad, there's no question to me that if we have, forget about here, I got a proper microphone, some lighting and stuff like that, but this is just recently. I've been doing stuff on the internet trying to spread stuff of Torah, Eretz Yisrael for quite a few years just with the phone that's in my pocket. And you can live broadcast, you can do YouTube videos, you can do so much stuff, and there are so many people around the world, Jews and lahavdil non-Jews, who are thirsty to hear the things that to us are just like every day. They're obvious. They seem almost mundane to us after a while because we get so used to them, and we have the ability to share it with people. So to me, I think like what the Rebbe said, the internet and the smartphones were not made for what people use them for. They were made for this, what we're doing right here.
It's an amazing idea.
Yeah. By the way, I want to go back to something you said before with the Nach and the Torah. Like, it's so awesome how you go to these places. And like, that's one of the things that really helped me do tshuva. Like, I saw them on documentaries, how you saw all these archaeological places and were back in the temple times, or even before that, from the Tanakh. And I wonder, like, when you have people come, do you have sometimes skepticals or people that are not so sure, and then they come and are they like shocked or surprised? Does that ever happen?
I'll tell you, I mean, because I'm a private tour guide, usually the people who hire me, they hire me. So they see my website and they see what I put out there. And it's very rare that I get someone who's totally secular that gets shocked. Usually what I get are religious Jews or also religious Christians who actually are coming to see what they believe be confirmed and strengthened, and to live it, experience it hands-on. So I don't really get much of what you're saying like that.
And what about the Christians? Like, how is that to be a religious chassid and to take Christians around Eretz Yisrael?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, a large part of the tourism to Israel is Christian tourism, including the churches and the sites which are of interest to Christians. I don't do any of that. I don't go to churches. I don't go to sites connected to Yeshu and stuff like that. And nevertheless, I get not a small amount of Christians, evangelicals, and others who they hire me because they want to, what we call the Tanakh and what they call the Old Testament is very important to them as well. And they feel that who could be better to bring to life the Tanakh than a religious Jew. And they want to hear it from a religious Jewish point of view. And those are always very interesting interactions to take those people around. In other words, I take Christians on essentially a Jewish tour, on a Tanakh tour. And those are always very interesting interactions. Most of them are very respectful and want to learn a lot. And every now and then I get Christians that want to try and convert me. And as much as I try to stay away from it, we find ourselves having theological discussions and debates, and those are interesting as well.
Well, you go to the mikveh every day, so...
most days, yeah. I don't want to say every day, but most days.
No dipping dipping in just the Jordan. In the proper mikveh.
Yeah.
So that's in the course though. I looked into being a tour guide, and that was one of the things that scared me. The person that I at first asked about it said, during the course, like, you have to learn about this, that, and the other, and go to these certain places, and you can't. There's no way out of it. And I was like, how does that make sense? Can you shed more light on that process?
First and foremost, let me say what you said is true. And I think it's a disgrace that in the state of Israel, a religious Jew can't get a tour guide license without studying things which our religion essentially prohibits, without studying Christian theology, and without learning about the architecture of churches and the art in the churches and the history and so on and so forth. I think it's a horrible thing. There should be some sort of kosher version of the tour guide license, and they could stipulate on the license that you're not allowed to guide people, you're not allowed to guide Christian tours to Christian sites, and I think we'd be fine with that, right? But the truth is that, yes, in order to get a tour guide license in Israel, you have to do a course. They changed it recently, but when I did it, it was about 2 years plus about another half a year of review and testing and all of that. And as part of it, you have to study the history of the land of Israel, the geology, the geography, the flora, the fauna, and also the religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, the minorities, like the Druze and the Circassians and others. And you also have to know the history and the important things about all of the major sites where tourists visit, including all the major churches in Jerusalem and around the Kinneret, and you have to know that stuff and you have to study it. Now, if you're an Orthodox Jew, it's accepted that they don't make you go into the churches, but you do have to know the information. Not having been in there is not an excuse to not know the information. So I did the course, and yes, they tried to scare me out of it as well when I registered, but I was very dedicated to doing it, and I felt that there have to be tour guides who are going to take tourists around Israel with the right outlook. And if I have to sort of take in that information, I'll take it in and move on. So actually, as soon as I got my tour guide license, I made a trip to Tzfat, especially to Toivel and the Arizal Mikvah. And I davened to Hashem that I should forget all of the not kosher things that I had to learn about in order to get the license. I don't know if I forgot all of them, but hopefully it helped.
Talking about my Mayanot, by the way, I remember like this summer we were in lockdown and I wanted so much to go to the Mayanot, and I saw on your Instagram you have so many beautiful pictures of Mayanot as well. Do you have any Mayanot? Maybe in this summer, I hope we'll be able to go out to these places.
God willing.
Yeah.
Things are opening up already now. I saw IKEA is opening on Sunday. My wife is excited.
Are you going to do a tour there? It's actually very difficult sometimes to find your way there.
You could get lost in IKEA, yes.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for Mayanot? Like, do you have like places that that are like maybe hidden or people maybe don't know about?
I have some, sure.
It's a secret.
This is a secret. It's not coming out.
I get it.
Call me afterwards.
Yeah.
Mikveh Ari.
That's a good
Mikveh
one.
Ari is a Mayan, isn't it? Historically?
Yeah,
Well,
it's
first
a
of
real
all,
name.
right there in Tzfat, if you hike down into the Nachal Amud, you have there the what's called Brechot Sechvi, which is like there's a natural water slide there. Have you been down there to the Nachal Amud?
I haven't been yet.
Heard
I've
about
been-
it.
Beautiful.
Since I
You
moved
go
here,
there
they've been
I mean,
telling-
you don't want to go in the snow, but when the weather warms up, just hike down to the valley between Tzfat and Meron, and there's some really nice water down there. Beautiful.
Should do it.
Let's make a trip out of
Bezrat
it.
Hashem.
Yeah.
I'll definitely get out of there. What more can you tell us about Tzfat? Because we've been talking about Tzfat, the fact that we're here and we're broadcasting from Tzfat, but just to share with some of the viewers a little bit of history. I guess this is going to be like one of your first virtual tours, but without any sightseeing, just a little bit about the history of Tzfat, the magic of Tzfat, and the importance in general of Jews, Am Yisrael, connecting to Eretz Yisrael and connecting to these holy places.
Yeah, so let's see. The history of Tzfat. Tzfat is a city that it's been around for a long time. Both in the Gemara, it's considered a city that goes back to the times before Yehoshua ben Nun, and also the archaeologists found there some remnants from what's called the Bronze Age, which means around the time of Avram Avinu, that there were people living there in Tzfat.
Shem and Ever, no?
Perhaps, absolutely, perhaps. You have the cave that's according to tradition, where the yeshiva of Shem Ve'ever was in Tzfat. So it's a very ancient city. It's not mentioned much in the Tanakh. It may be referenced once, but most people say that's a different Tzfat in the south of the country, and that's what makes sense. But in the Second Temple period, there were a lot of people, Jews living in Tzfat, and more importantly, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, in the Beis Hamikdash there were 24 what's called Mishmeres HaKuhuna, 24 what do you call it?
Guards.
Well, not
Shifts.
That's the word I'm looking for. 24 shifts. Throughout the year, the Kohanim. Not all the Kohanim were in the Beis Hamikdash all year. They served in 24 shifts, and then on the holidays they would all serve together because you need a lot more Kohanim on staff for all the karbanas of the Olei Rega. So when the temple was destroyed, the 24 Mishmeres HaKuhuna moved to 24 different cities in the Galilee, and Tzfat had one of the Mishmerot of the Kohanim was living in Tzfat, which means it was an important temple in an important city in the Second Temple period. And, there were Jews in Tzfat on and off throughout history, but really, when did Tzfat become a big and important place? It started when, after the destruction of Judaism in Spain, the Gerush Sfarad, after the exile of the Jews from Spain, some of the greatest minds of the Jewish people started to make their way to Tzfat. And that's when you have the sort of golden era of Tzfat, when you have people like Rabbi Yosef Karo, who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, like the Arizal, like Rabbi Chaim Vital, like Rabbi Moshe Alshech, like Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, who wrote the Pardes Rimonim, like Rabbi Yisrael Najara, who wrote a lot of the Zmirot Shabbat that we sing till today, and so many more, started to gather in Tzfat from all over the Jewish world, from Spain, from Italy, and from other places. And this melding of minds that happened at that time, there was never anything like it in Jewish history, at least since the times of the Talmud, I would say. And out of a window of about 100 years, from the early 1500s till the early 1600s in Tzfat, we get a complete revolutionizing of Yiddishkeit, of Judaism, as far as halacha, as far as Kabbalah, as far as minhagim, of things that we do till today. I'll give you like an obvious example. Kabbalat Shabbat. Before the Tzfat period, there wasn't really such a thing as Kabbalat Shabbat, at least not as a regular thing that Jews do in every synagogue. Maybe there were individuals who would do something for Kabbalat Shabbat, but as a whole, Jews would daven mincha, they'd go home, they'd make kiddush, do the Sudat Shabbat for about a half an hour, and then they'd go back to shul and daven Maariv and go home and, go to bed, learn, whatever. But there was no Kabbalat Shabbat. There was no Shalom Aleichem, Eshes Chayil, all these things that we do at the Shabbos table. So many things that to us are just basic Judaism that, today even Reform synagogues have Kabbalat Shabbat, right? So that all started in Tzfat.
Wow. It's amazing history that also the in Tzfat we have this aspect of Pshat, of like the Shulchan Aruch, the codex of all Jewish law comes out of here. And then we also have the Ramak and the Arizal bringing the deepest lights of Kabbalah down. And it's kind of like, what is Tzfat? Tzfat is the Tatzpit. It's the viewpoint, right? Like the viewpoint. And what is the main view of Tzfat is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was a master in halacha, to the point
Absolutely.
that if you get to a point where you don't know what to do, right? Like you can trust Rabbi Shimon if you know what he says on the halacha. Don't matter. Like, don't worry about it. At the end of the day, if Rabbi Shimon has an opinion and you know it, you can trust him, right? And also Rabbi Shimon is the Zohar, so it's really amazing how Tzfat manages to infuse these two in quite a mystical and miraculous way that not many communities can.
It's actually, you could say, because of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that Tzfat became what it is. Because the question that you have to ask is, why did so many rabbis and Kabbalists gather in Tzfat of all places? As I said, Tzfat, there is evidence of Jewish life there throughout all the ages, but it was never a central city in any way. It's not Jerusalem, right? It was never, it's not Hebron, it's not Jerusalem, it's not Bethlehem, it's not any of the major biblical cities or Torah cities. Like, how did it turn out that all these great rabbis ended up in Tzfat? And one of the answers that both the Jewish researchers and the secular kind of researchers give is that not that long before the exile from Spain, the Zohar was revealed. So the Zohar was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but it was hidden away for hundreds of years until it was revealed in Spain. And when the Jews were exiled from Spain, those who came to Eretz Yisrael, many of the Kabbalists and the Torah scholars wanted to live near the place where the kever of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was. And that's why in Kabbalat Shabbat, for example,
turn to the west.
You turn west towards the kever Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So even though I live in Be'er Sheva and I'm south of Tzfat, we turn west, but it doesn't really make sense here. In Tzfat, it makes sense because we're turning west.
The Shechina is in the
Shechina b'Marava, but also they would face the kever of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and that's really the sort of like magnet that drew. One of the things, let's say at least, that drew so many people to Tzfat. There were other economic reasons. It was somewhat of an economic center at that time, and a lot of the Jews who came from Spain were in the textile industry, and there was a textile industry there. What's that?
The wool, like sheep wool and
dyeing and weaving textiles. So, but there were other places in Israel where there were textiles being made as well. And the combination of that giving the ability to have a parnasa, but more importantly, they wanted to be near Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
Close to the tzaddik.
Yeah, it's very interesting you said it, because nowadays it's definitely not a hub for business. And now the only people that come here, it can only be because of the kedusha that you have here, only because of the spirituality. It's kind of like they took the other thing out, and now it's just spirituality.
It's someone asked today. I don't know if you saw Rabbi Aaron on Instagram. I put up like let people ask you some questions before we get on here.
I saw them just before I came on.
And
do you want me to answer them here or on Instagram?
No, whatever you want. You can decide. We can get to some of them. But one of them was like, it wasn't a question. It was just like someone saying they enjoy our show. And he says, how do people in Tzfat make a livelihood? Like, how do you do that? So I put up, Tzfat is an acronym for Tzrichim Parnasat Tamid. We always need help with Parnasah. That's the city. There's nothing can help it. But yeah, go ahead if you have them written down. If you want to get into some of them.
Also,
the thing about the Parnasa and Tzfat, on the one hand, you're right, it's hard to make a Parnasa and Tzfat. On the other hand, it's a relatively low cost of living. So
exactly, that's the reason I'm here. I left Yerushalayim to cut my living in half in this unstable economy.
Not your life, but your living. But yeah, you said indeed it was very interesting how 200 years ago, 300 years ago, or how many 100 years ago, like all these Kabbalists came here. And it was then such a hub of tzaddikim and like very kedusha place. But it's very interesting because I talk to people that have been here for like 10, 20, 30 years, even 5 years actually, they said like there was almost nothing here. Like it was mainly a secular place. It was kind of like the Elat of the North. I heard people say people came here for holidays to go into a hotel. But in the last 5
Beit
years...
Havra, there was a Beit Havra in Tzfat, which is like, it's like, there's a term for it in English that I forget, but it's like a place where the labor unions send you once or twice a year to just go and sit around and get fed good food and breathe clean air and just, heal yourself and gather strength after working hard for a period of time.
What went wrong there?
Well, when the state of Israel was established, of course, the people who were at the forefront of establishing the state were generally secular people. And generally, their overt approach, we could argue about what was hidden deep in their heart, but at least their overt stated approach was to create a secular state, to a great extent divorced from the Jewish religion. They saw Tzfat as a beautiful mountain town that could be like the Alps of Israel, where you could have, living in the forest and the mountains, fresh air, artists and things like that. And actually, the artist colony in Tzfat was originally Muslim houses. And in 1948, in the War of Independence, the Muslims fled Tzfat. And that whole area was left abandoned, and homeless people were moving in, and drug addicts and all kinds of people. So the state of Israel announced that any artist who will come and set up a studio in those old Arab houses and display their artwork there for a certain period of time will get ownership of that house. And that's how the artist colony was.
Good deal.
I just got the history of my neighborhood. That's pretty cool.
It's interesting to know.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Tzfat is a really interesting place. What's your favorite place in Israel?
Everybody always asks me that.
What do you want?
I don't know. It's like when people. It's like if someone asks me who's my favorite child. How do you answer that? There's so many beautiful places in Eretz Yisrael. There's so many holy places in Eretz Yisrael. How can you say if you love more the Kever of Rashbi or Marsa Machpelah, or how can you say if you love more floating in the Dead Sea or standing in the snow on the Hermon like I did last week? Or how can you say if you love more to go to the site of Yaakov's dream of the Yaakov's ladder and Bethel, or the site of the Mishkan in Shiloh, or Har Grizim and Har Eval? I don't know how you decide among those things.
It's a good answer. It's true. It's also beautiful here.
Mimetula Adelat, like we say here in Israel.
You cut out for a second. Say that again.
I said, Mi Metula ad Eilat, like we say here, from Metula until Eilat, and soon into Jordan.
Well, Metula ad Eilat was before we had the Golan Heights, so...
Exactly. Now you go even more. Ah, that's true.
We're further north.
Wow. Yeah, and now in the last, I think it is a good sign, like in the last 5 years, it's been going so well. Like the communities here has been blossoming, so much Yiddishkeit, so much Kedusha, like big Rebbes come here all the time. That's Tzfat.
In Tzfat, you mean?
Yeah.
Baruch Hashem. You know, I have a brother who lived in Tzfat for quite a few years. Now he lives in Baltimore. But when he was living in Tzfat, I used to visit Tzfat regularly, and I've seen over the last 20 years or so how things are developing. It's very nice to see, Baruch Hashem.
So one of the questions on Instagram, the one that you've answered quite a few of them. The main one that we left out is people want to know when do you see tourism picking back up? I don't even know if you can answer that question, but maybe you have some insider
when people
information.
asked me this a year ago, when people asked me, first of all, I'm not a prophet. I can only do my best analysis. But when people asked me a year ago, I told them that I think maybe we'll have the first beginning of opening up around Pesach time. And by the summer, maybe it will be back like 60%. And it'll probably be a whole nother year till it's back 100%. So I still think that's correct, because my logic behind that was very simple, that even if last summer, even if there would be a dip in the cases, which there was to some extent, but they won't be able to fully open up until we pass through the winter and see how the winter goes. And if the winter goes well and we have the vaccines and everything is in place, then by this spring, hopefully they'll be able to start to open up at least to people who are vaccinated or who have had corona already, and hopefully by the summer more so, and it'll probably be another full year till things get back anywhere close to 100%.
B'ezrat Hashem, hopefully Pesach is the time of Cherut, of freedom. So
Exodus.
Hopefully my prediction will be right, but instead of just the tourists coming back, all of Am Yisrael will come back to the Beis HaMikdash.
Amen. 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 Right. I really want to thank you, Rebbe Aaron. It was amazing to learn. You have so much insight to share, and on social media as well. Tour Guide Aaron, if anyone wants to look, AARON, Tour Guide Aaron on Instagram. And also a website.
We'll put the links.
We'll put the links all down below. Really, thank you so much for one, just zrima, just flowing with us and being like, yalla, let's do it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys very much. I'm very excited about your new podcast, and I think you guys have a lot of good stuff you can do. And I think that it's very important that every Jew use the technology to spread as much good, positive things as possible. So I'm very happy to come on with you guys. And I hope to visit you when I'm in Tzfat, Emir Sashem.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah. This is the virtual meeting, but hopefully soon we'll have a real Fabrengen with a nice L'chaim here in Tzfat.
And if you guys are willing to leave the holiness of Tzfat to come to Be'er Sheva, the city of Avram Avinu, you're welcome anytime to come down for a Shabbos.
Of course. B'ezrat Hashem. From one holiness to another holiness.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Rebbe Aaron.
Thank you.
God bless you guys. Bye.
You too.